Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome Mr. Anil Kumar.
Hello everybody, welcome you all for our session titled Verification Activities to be Considered for Achieving IEC 62304 Compliance. So the agenda for our session goes like this. First, we're going to have a brief introduction about IEC 62304. Then we're going to discuss more about what are the various software safety classification as per IEC 62304. And then we're going to talk more about what are the various verification activities which has to be considered as part of IEC 62304. And just after that, we're going to discuss more about how are we going to achieve IEC 62304 compliance using LDRA solution. And then we're going to conclude. So let's get going. IEC 62304 provides a framework for medical device manufacturers to develop safe and secure software, which has various processes, activities, and tasks, which needs to be carried out all through the software development lifecycle. It identifies requirements for what need to be done and what need to be documented all through the software development lifecycle. It also specifies specific software safety classification scheme, which we'll discuss just after this. And this standard applies to the development and maintenance of medical device software. When software is itself a medical device, software is used as a component, part, or an accessory of a medical device, or when software used in the production of a medical device itself. But the standard does not cover validation and final release of the medical device, even when the medical device consists entirely of software. This is a brief timeline about IEC 62304. The first version of IEC 62304 was released on 2006, titled Medical Device Software Lifecycle Processes, Edition 1, which had 151 pages. And then the current version or the next version was released in 2015 as an Amendment 1, again with the same title, Medical Device Software Lifecycle Processes, Amendment 1, Edition 1 with 80 pages. And then there's a new variant which is under construction, or the draft version is already out, but we are waiting for the final version. But over here, the title will not remain same. It will be called as Health Software Lifecycle Processes. Now let's see what is the structure of IEC 62304. So 62304 basically consists of 9 classes. Okay, scope, normative references, terms and definitions, general requirement, software development process, maintenance process, risk management process, software configuration management process, and software problem resolution process. So over here, we are clearly highlighting the software development process, wherein you can see that various activity which needs to be completed as part of the software development process. So you can see over here, we have software development planning, software requirement analysis, and towards the software release. We do have the software maintenance process, which will be more or less similar to what the software development process which we have mentioned over here, but there are additional few things which has to be taken care as part of maintenance process. And software risk management process has to be performed all through the software development lifecycle as well as 62304. Now let's see what are the different software safety classifications as well as the IEC 62304. IEC 62304 standard expects the manufacturer to assign a safety class to the software system as a whole. This classification is based on the potential to create an hazard that could result in an injury to the user, patient, or the person who is actually using that equipment. Software system may have lower worst case risk than device overall, but cannot be at a higher side. The default assumption is any device will be classified as class C, and then it will be categorized based on various risk and hazards. Okay, we'll discuss that in a while. There are three software classes, namely class A, class B, and class C. Class A means any software devices. If the failures of that device happens, there is no injury or damage to the health is possible. Class B, wherein a failure will not lead into non-serious injury. Class C, a failure can impact death or serious injury to the user, patient, or people who's using the equipment. So let's see how the safety classification is assigned. As discussed, by default, it is classified as class C, and then based on the risk analysis, wherein the manufacturer need to make sure can a hazardous situation arise from failure of the software. So if there is no hazardous situation which is going to come up, then it will be classified as class A, which is at the lower side. If it is yes, then the manufacturer need to evaluate effectiveness of risk control measure external to the software, and does the failure of the software result into unacceptable risk? If it is again no, then again the device can be classified as class A, which is at the lower side. If it is yes, or severity of injury is possible. If it is non-serious injury, it will be classified as class B. If it is serious injury or death, it will be classified as class C. This is how the software safety classification will be done as per 62304 by the manufacturers. The software safety classification has a tremendous impact on the software development lifecycle. So you can see over here, so if it is a class A device, the manufacturer need to comply only a few subclasses as far as 62304 is concerned. Whereas if it is class C, you need to comply to all the subclasses wherein all the activities and tasks need to be performed, completed, and accomplished as far as IEC 62304 is concerned. With that brief information about IEC 62304, now let's dive into what are the various verification activities which has to be considered as far as the IEC 62304 software development process. A brief info about recalls. An FDA analysis of 3,140 medical device recalls, which were conducted between 1992 and 1998, reveals that 79% of the software-related recalls were caused by software defects introduced when changes were made to the software after its initial production and distribution. So clearly we can see that there is a huge amount of software which is getting into the medical device, and a failure of the software can have a huge impact on the entire medical device itself. Now let's see what are the verification activities which has to be considered as a whole. So right from the initial phase, which is basically requirement management, and till the final verification validation phases, there are a lot of activities which need to be completed. For example, during the initial phase, specifically with respect to requirements, traceability is a very important activity, requirement traceability. Okay. Then when you dive into your design phase, that's where coding standard compliance will come into picture, complexity analysis will come into picture, data flow, control flow analysis will come into picture. Okay. And then when you dive into the other section of or other part of your V diagram or your development life cycle, that's where detailed testing phase will come into picture, wherein you may have to perform unit testing, integration testing, system level testing. You may have to achieve structural coverage analysis and so on. And finally, tool qualification and compliance management. So these are all the activities which has to be completed as a whole as far as your software development lifecycle is concerned. So let's dive into requirements traceability. As we have seen, is requirement engineering is one of the key aspects of any product development lifecycle. So the same thing holds good even for the medical device as well. So the challenge over here is the requirements can come from various sides. So for example, from the user, from the clients, from the manufacturers, from the medical practitioners, and so on. So multiple requirements can come, and there is pre-requirement traceability which has to be accomplished during those initial phases of requirement gathering. Once you have the requirements, these requirements are again evolving, which means like as and when you have requirements, additional requirements might come in, and so on. So we say like requirement keeps on evolving, okay? But normally what is being done is like you freeze a specific requirement or you baseline a requirement, and then you proceed with your design and verification phases. So that is where post-requirement traceability comes into picture, wherein on the freeze requirement, you may have to start your design. You need to trace your design with your requirement, and then you need to start testing based on your requirement on your design as well as on the code, whatever you have designed. Okay, so traceability between testing to your requirement, testing to your code, testing to your design, okay, design to your requirement is very, very important. Okay, so the main advantage of a good requirement engineering or requirement management is, have we defined our requirements in a formal manner? Have we defined the security requirements and safety requirements appropriately? Are we in sync with the exact product requirements? And do we have traceability between requirements to test cases to the source code? So, as I mentioned, there are multiple levels of requirements which need to be achieved. For example, from system level requirement to your integration test, high level requirements to your software integration test, software low level requirements to unit test, and again your low level requirements to your source code, which is being developed based on your low level requirements. There are different levels of traceability which needs to be achieved. Again, traceability can decrease cost and can reduce your time and can maintain your product very well and reduce your product defects at the very initial phase itself. The next thing is about coding standards. This comes into picture when you start developing your code. Okay? It could be like you may be using a model-based approach wherein the model is generating the source code out of it, or you may use the traditional approach, which is hand coding. Okay, so as per the subclause 5.5.3 of ISA 62304, one of the acceptance criteria for software unit includes conformance to programming procedures or coding standards. Again, as per B 5.5, software unit implementation and verification, it requires manufacturers to write and verify the code. Coding standards should be used to specify a preferred coding style. It will help to consistently achieve desirable code characteristics. And an example of coding standard includes requirements of understandability, language use rules and restrictions, complexity management, and so on. Automated coding standards compliance will help you to eliminate defects early in the life cycle itself. So if you look at it, there are various coding standards which are available currently in the market. Okay, more mature coding guidance are available. An example for them are MISRA, which is widely acknowledged and used by various industry. Then we have CERT, CWE, HIC++, AUTOSAR, JSF++, bar group, and similarly there are a lot of other coding standards as well. The main intention of these coding standards are basically to help us to develop application keeping in mind safety and security. Nowadays, like, since most of these devices are hooked to the internet, security has become a pain point. So these standards not only talk about safety, it also talks about security. And the standard also talk about quality aspects of your code, like whether whatever application you have designed, what are the quality parameters of your code. We'll discuss about that briefly just after this. And as I mentioned, security is one of the major consideration which is going on right now, wherein most of the manufacturers, they not only make sure that they verify the code against safety guidelines, but also with security guidelines also. And it is also very important that to follow a specific style or particular style when you start writing your code. So style guidelines is also very, very important. Okay. So let's move further. And if you look at section 5.5.4, additional software unit acceptance criteria, the standard also talks about something called as data flow and control flow. So what do you mean by data flow and control flow? So data flow analysis basically follows variables throughout the source code and reports any anomalous usage of those variables. This is performed at procedure level and also at part of the system level also. So what is control flow analysis? So control flow analysis is performed both on the programming call hierarchy and on the individual procedures. The rule of structured programming are applied and defects are reported. So apart from the coding standard guidelines, data flow and control flow analysis is also a very key task which needs to be achieved. So an example of data flow and control flow analysis you can see over here. The data flow analysis, as I mentioned earlier, it could be anomalies like defined and unreferred, okay, unreferred when defined and defined again. So most common is defined and unreferred or undefined and referred, okay, which means you have not defined it, but you are referencing it somewhere, which means a garbage value could have been used as part of your application. Similarly, there are a lot of other anomalies like array overflows, underflows, null pointer references, illegal pointer access, and so on, which are again very, very vital as far as software defects are concerned. And you can see towards the right-hand side, there is a control flow diagram wherein it can give a clear-cut picture about how the application or each function level control flow happens. This can give you a detailed information about how application behaves. So this could be used basically to compare the code against the design as well. All right, so this is again another example wherein you can see how the control flow can actually give us more information about the complexity of the code. So you can see over here in the right-hand side, the control flow is basically taken out of from a very well-known open source tool, which is 7-Zip, which is a Windows-based open source tool. So we have analyzed the source code, and you can see over here, this is how the control flow looks for few of the functions over here. And you can see for the functions over here, it has highest cyclometer complexity. So cyclometer complexity can give you information regarding how complex is your application. And by the way, like if your application is too complex, then it is very difficult for you to maintain your code, test your code as well. Okay, so it is very, very important that you make sure that like you develop your code, keeping the complexity as low as possible. Next comes structural coverage analysis. This needs to be done at various levels. We'll discuss about that. So there are different kinds of structural coverage which are actually possible. For example, statement coverage, branch coverage, MCDC coverage, function coverage, call coverage, LCSJ coverage, data coupling and control coupling coverage, object code coverage. Again, many of them may not be relevant as far as IEC 62304 is concerned, but the most predominantly followed one is statement coverage, branch coverage, and MCDC coverage. The intention of coverage analysis is basically to identify whether you have sufficiently tested your code based on your requirements, and whether is there any unreachable code or dead code in your application. Okay, is there any missing test cases because you have a specific section of the code or branch which has not been exercised. Okay, so all these things can be identified as part of structural coverage analysis. And what are the different tests which you can perform, which can yield to structural coverage analysis? One among them is unit testing, and there is a clear-cut indication as far as 62304 is concerned. You need to do a detailed unit test, wherein you have to refer to the low-level requirement or your design document. Based on that, you need to start designing your test cases, and those test cases then need to be exercised on the code that has been designed or developed, either on the target platform or on a simulated platform. You can also do it on host machine to an extent, but it is recommended that all these tests need to be run on the exact target hardware what is going to be launched. All right. So that's was a brief information about what are the various verification activities which needs to be performed as far as ISA 62304 is concerned. So let's see how you can achieve ISA 62304 compliance using LDRA, how those verification tasks can be achieved using LDRA. So if you look at LDRA, we have solutions wherein we can actually verify your code at multiple instances of your software development lifecycle. So at the very first level, which is basically your requirement management phase, we have solutions wherein we can actually import your requirements, which could be in Word, Excel, PDF documents, and we can then establish the traceability between them and generate the traceability metrics report. Okay, but if you're using any requirement management tools, we do have integration with various requirement management tools, and then import those requirements from those tools and establish a traceability between them as well. And then followed by, when you start developing your code, when you have the code with you, which has been designed based of your low-level requirement, you can even generate the traceability between your low-level requirement to your source code, from your requirement to your test cases as well. Okay, so all these things can be achieved using LDRA as far as requirement traceability is concerned. Then when you go to the actual design or implementation phase, that's where our static analysis capabilities will come into picture, wherein we can actually do detailed coding standard compliance. So we do support for about 20 odd different standards, coding guidelines. One among them is MISRA. So we support all variants of MISRA, CERT, CW, and so on. We do have a provision where you can even create your own subset or superset. We do have a provision where you can even create your own rules, okay, specifically keeping into mind the naming conventions. So as I've personally seen, like many of the medical device manufacturers, they tend to use their own internal guidelines specific on naming conventions, style guidelines, and so on. And it is very difficult to automatically verify them. So we from LDRA, we have solution wherein you can even create your own custom rules and making sure that those rules can be implemented and verified by LDRA. Okay, and then we do have detailed analysis for complexity and quality, wherein we have somewhere around 40 different matrices which can be measured out of your code. You can generate detailed reports for it. And one among those matrices is cyclomatic complexity. Next, we do have solution when you go for the next level, which is basically dynamic analysis. That's where you can use our unit testing, integration testing capabilities, wherein you can actually create test cases using our solution, where the harness is auto-generated by the tool. We do have a capability where even the test case can also be automatically generated. You can execute those test cases on your simulation platform, your real target hardware, or on your host platform. Okay, and then based on your criticality levels, like if it is class A, class B, class C, you can then try to achieve different levels of coverage. For example, statement coverage, branch coverage, MCDC coverage. For example, like if it is class C device, all three has to be 100%. Whereas if it is class A, only statement coverage would be sufficient. Okay, so you can club the coverage analysis along with unit testing, integration testing, and you can generate detailed reports for it. And finally, our tools are also certified by TUV. We have a detailed TUV certificate, which is again recommended for industries like medical industry, automotive, industrial, nuclear, and so on. So if you look at a view model, we have solution right from the initial phase, which is requirement analysis and specification, down to coding, to unit or module testing, and finally to the acceptance and maintenance. We have different features as part of our solution, which could be used all through your software development lifecycle. And as I mentioned earlier, our solution is also certified by TUV. This is a brief snapshot of our TUS certificate, which clearly gives you indication that the tool is certified to be used for industrial, automotive, railway, nuclear, and medical domains. So to conclude, IEC 62304 speaks about risk-based approach for software development lifecycle. Various activities specifically for verification has to be carried out at different stages of software development lifecycle, which we have already discussed. Those activities can be requirement traceability analysis, coding standard compliance, data flow and control flow analysis, structural coverage analysis, which has to be achieved either through unit testing, integration testing, or at your acceptance or system level testing. So using tools with a proven track record and pedigree to automate the software development process will help you to produce safe and secure product, provide confidence to the manufacturer, obviously saving huge amount of time and money. So the last quote, a safe medical device is the outcome of the best practice followed in implementing the attributes of safety and security. So that concludes my session. And if you need more information, you can please visit our website. You can also go to YouTube. We have a separate channel and YouTube where you can be able to see various demonstration of our solutions with integration with various third-party solutions as well.